Hello and welcome to this Ranger 4 webcast. Today's webcast will look at taking control of your requirements with Doors Next Generation. The webcast will be brought to you by Matt Mendo, the Internet of Things specialist at IBM. For now, I'll pass you over to Matt.
Thank you, Tej, and good afternoon, everyone. So, this afternoon we're going to look at how you can take control of your requirements using IBM's Doors Next Generation tool. So, over the course of this webinar, we're going to start looking at some of the common challenges we see in developing and delivering complex systems and products, and then having a look at our requirements management solution and the other solutions that complement it, to how we can start to overcome those challenges. As we move on, I'll outline some of the key capabilities and the benefits that IBM Rational Doors Next Generation in particular can deliver, and then I'll commence with a demonstration of the product. So as I believe you've already been told, you're on mute for purposes of this webinar, but there will be an opportunity to take some questions at the end, so we'll have time for that. So in terms of requirements management as a domain and some of the common challenges we see, what we find is that evidence suggests that the later we spot errors in any design and development process, the more costly those errors are to repair. And naturally, this is quite logical and something we see all the time. If you can correct a mistake when you're in the process of developing a model, it's a simple few clicks, it's easy to correct, or if it's in a document, easy to correct, not a problem. If that error gets carried down throughout the rest of the design and development process and actually goes into production, then that can be a very costly error. There's a lot of rework required to go back, repeat the process again, and dramatically increase the costs and the time associated with our development process. So we want to be spotting those errors as early as we can to make sure that we can ultimately keep our projects on time and on budget. That's what this is about, really. And this kind of comes into this philosophy that started to come in use in business in recent times, which is the idea of the left shift principle, which is if you move everything further across to the beginning, all the time and the effort in the beginning of your design and development process, ultimately that means that we're going to have a smoother process overall, and we're going to have less work further down the line for ourselves. So you've got some statistics there on the screen which demonstrate exactly why. And what we find is that in order to avoid these kinds of costly mistakes, there are 7 key fundamentals which we want to adhere to in order to be able to have a really tight control of our requirements throughout the design process. So the first of these is granularity. If we deal with requirements at the most granular level, which is the most atomic level where we can test each requirement against itself and nothing else, then we make sure that we keep control of that requirement throughout the design process, and at that very granular level, we're making sure that we're keeping track of which requirements we're supposed to be dealing with. We don't have too many, we're not losing any that we should have control of throughout the design process. Another key fundamental is attributes. So attributes are additional pieces of information about each of those very granular requirements which we've been dealing with. And using those attributes, we're going to sort and prioritize each of the requirements to make sure that we're dealing with the requirements that are most important to us and making sure that we organize them correctly within our setup and so forth. The next 2 are kind of related, and they are hierarchy and traceability. So hierarchy, first of all, gives us the context for our requirements. We're making sure that the right people are going to see the right requirements, and only the right people are seeing those requirements. And with traceability, again, we're making sure that we're keeping track of all of our requirements. They are linked to the other requirements and other forms of information that we need them to, so maybe out to standards or onto test cases, and we're keeping a tight control of our requirements at every stage of our design and development process to make sure that we're dealing with exactly what we want to be dealing with. Next, we have the idea of collaboration. So typically in any design process, you may have different stages. So you may have the analysis phase at the start, design, build phase, testing. And traditionally, the way that each of these the stages of the process have been managed is in a very siloed manner. So each team may work just on its own. We have individuals who maybe work externally for some reason, or we have a greater distance between different members of the team. And that reduces the overall amount of collaboration. And collaboration is one of the key fundamentals in spotting the errors that we have in our requirements nice and early, and keeping all of the information about the changes and the decisions that are being made as part of our design process available for all the different members of the team and all the different teams to be able to view. So collaboration is a very important fundamental in this list. Next, we have the idea of an audit trail. So we want to make sure that for, again, reviewing decision-making processes or reporting out to external stakeholders or maybe regulators, we want to be able to show what decisions were made, who made them, and when. And ultimately, as part of that, we also want to be able to have a very tight control on who sees our information, so that we're making sure that only the right people that have the right, can view that information. And lastly, we have reporting, because ultimately, of course, once we've done all of the work on our requirements and we've got them to the point where we need to produce them externally, we need a way of getting them out of the system in a format that we can provide to external stakeholders. The way that we start to do that is by moving through a process that I like to call chaos to order. So we start out with this non-integrated data where we've got that visualized at the top here with unconnected documents, perhaps in Word and Excel, and we've got no links other than the manual process of updating those links between those documents, and there can be a lot of work around that. So maybe we've got issues with version control where we don't have people looking at the same version of the document. We've got a lot of manual work around maintaining that, and then ultimately, if we've got information that's not updated in one version versus another, we have to go back and look into how we can collate the information that's in those different versions. And what we want to do is to pull all of the information out of this spread of interconnected documents and pull them into one single repository. So we do that with a tool like Rational Doors Next Generation. It's worth saying actually that the Rational is kind of a historic name that's still associated with the product. That actually is going to be something that continues for a while, but I may well just refer to it as Doors Next Generation throughout this. But we're going to pull all of the information from our documents into a single repository, and then once we've got the requirements in that repository, we can start to deal with them on an individual level. So we can structure them, link them together, create that traceability, appropriately place them within the hierarchy as necessary, make sure that we give the right people the right context to be able to review those requirements, and then we can control all of that because we're viewing everything just in a single repository. And so, like I just said, the name Rational is still present in many of our products, and we've got numerous associated products that align with Rational Doors Next Generation. And what this slide is ultimately showing is that Rational Doors Next Generation sits on what's called the JAS platform. So the JAS platform came about because, as I alluded to before, historically we've had different teams working on different areas of the design process. And what that means is that, as well as the siloed effect we have between teams, as I mentioned before, they've also got different tools that provide them with different functionality. And what the JAS platform aims to do is to unify all of the administration of those tools to make sure that we've got one central system where we can handle over that. So all of our logins, our updates, our backups, everything's handled just by one system that can connect all of these different tools, these different capabilities. And the way that it does that is it uses this standard here called the Open Services for Lifecycle Collaboration. So this is actually a standard which was originally created by IBM, but it's since been handed off to the external community, and that's something that's actually being managed outside of IBM. But that standard allows us to link all of these different tools together so that we can, for example, link our requirements that sit in DAWS Next Generation to our work items and our defects that might sit in Rational Concert, and our test items that sit in Rational Quality Manager. And additionally, we can link up to some of the architecture and design modeling that we might have in tools like Rhapsody or Rational System Architect to allow us to show where we've got requirements in those models. Sitting alongside the JAS platform itself, we've then got additional tools which link into the platform as a whole. So, for example, we've got Rational Method Composer, which deals with process management. We've got Rational Publishing Engine, which deals with very complex document generation. We've got things like Rational Insight, which is the Cognos engine to allow us to do some very detailed analytics and reporting within the JAS platform. So again, all of that linking together is handled by the fact that we've got all of the tools sitting on one platform. And the way we might start to structure that information might look something like this. So we've got different documents here at different levels where we've got decomposition of our requirements into something more technical, like higher level requirements down to stakeholder requirements, further on down to functional and non-functional requirements, and then on into the design phase. And for each stage of our requirements here, what we're aiming to do is to make sure that we completely satisfy the requirements at the previous level. So when we get to the stakeholder requirements level, we're going to ensure that we're able to quickly and easily run queries to allow us to make sure that we're satisfying all of the requirements in our vision document, something more high level. And we carry on this process down the various levels of decomposition, and as we move through the design and the build phase and actually come to where we've got a working product, we're then going to do something similar as we move up through the various levels of our testing. So at each level of the testing, we're going to link back to the appropriate level on the requirement side and make sure that we're delivering what we actually wanted to deliver, what we actually promised to deliver. Separately to all of this, we may have things like high-level business rules which we're linking out to, or perhaps external legislation or standards that we're constrained by, things like risk and issue logs, or possibly even work breakdown structures that we're going to go away and want to develop this project. And something like this is how we might structure our information in a tool like DAWS Next Generation. But ultimately, all of this language is completely customizable within the tool. So the principles might be the same. We start with something high level in terms of our requirements and move down to something more technical. But depending on the type of project you're implementing, this may be something that's very rigid and looks more like a V, or it might be something that's much more loose and iterative, as might be done in a more agile approach. Okay, so with that, I'm going to move on to the tool itself. And I'm going to show this to you in a number of different stages. So first of all, when we start up a project for the first time, of course, the first thing we're going to want to do is to populate the project with data. So we're going to start by importing some of our data. So if I come into the tool, so I log in as myself. So first of all, we've got that security, which I touched on as part of our key fundamentals. I have a role within the system, which gives me a certain level of access to functionality within the system. Those logins can be connected to an LDAP system if necessary, and having that login means that I also have access to a number of different projects which are relevant to me. So the first thing that we see as we come into the tool is the dashboard. So the dashboard harvests live information from the database from a number of different areas, and we can completely customize what this looks like. So what we have on this dashboard are things called widgets. These widgets can be set up in a number of different ways, and I can reorganize my dashboard and customize it as I see fit. So what we're actually looking at here is a dashboard for a particular project. So this is something that would be configured by the project manager or someone who's got the appropriate administration rights. And that allows us to set information that are widgets showing particular information that's relevant to this particular project. So this is something that you can hire. And as you can see, I've got things like a widget showing me the other members within this project. I've got a widget showing some of the brief changes that have been made recently, and I've also got widgets showing me comments that have been directed to myself, and another one for reviews. So we can set up all sorts of different widgets. There's a whole library of them which we can add. If I just bring that up very briefly, you can see some of the things that we can add in. And additionally, we've got widgets that we can take from the other areas of the JAS platform as well. So for example, if we want to be able to see where we've got requirements which are linked to a particular set of tests, we can pull up a widget that's going to allow us to do that. We also got widgets showing us various graphs related to information about how the project is progressing. So we've got a whole library, a whole raft of different widgets that allow us to do that, and all of that is completely customizable. So that's just a brief introduction to what we're seeing in the system here. In terms of the import process itself, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the Browse Artifacts page, which is just going to show us the structure of our project. And you can see here we've got a folder structure which has got everything nice and neatly organized. We've got nothing at the base level here, which is good. And what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to say, okay, I want to go in and import some artifacts externally from the system. So there's a number of different formats which we can use to do this. We support Word documents, CSV files, which we can take from Excel, and also the requirements interchange format, which can be taken from other requirements management tools. So in this particular example, I'm going to take it from a Word document. So I'm going to go and find a particular Word file, which, if you believe it, is right there waiting for me. And I'm going to select the type of requirements that I want this to be. So when I alluded to some of the structure that we might have within the tool before, what we've got here is a customizable list of artifact types that we deal with. So each of these artifact types can have particular characteristics about them in the way that we treat them. They can have particular attributes associated with them. So what we need to do for the system is just tell the system which types of requirements we actually want to use as. In this case, it's going to be stakeholder requirements. So I'm going to bring those in, and should have my requirements come in there. Right folder. Okay, great. So got those all loaded up. Going to tell the system that using the heading and style format that we've got in the Word document, we're going to pull each of those artifacts through in through as different types. The system's going to go through and identify those for me. So as it goes through those, it's going to traverse the document and do a little count for me. So we can see we've got a number of different headings in there, a number of different requirements, some links and some images as well. So I'm going to start that importing. So as I say, we can do the importing in a number of different ways. This is one way where we can actually just directly import the requirements, and that's going to automatically go through and break up those requirements for us. Another way we could do this is that we could import the Word document as an artifact on its own, and from there we can extract the requirements from within the system. But this gives us a nice, easy way to go through, import the requirements, and then it's going to bring them straight into the system as individual artifacts. So again, we're starting to deal with that granularity that we saw earlier. We want to make sure each requirement comes in as its own object, and that way we can start to deal with it at a very granular level. So I'm going to go in now and select my stakeholder requirements document, which we've got here. And you can see that we've brought in the requirements here. So this is where we've got all of our requirements organized in a module form, which is using some of that hierarchy that we talked about before. So a module essentially puts all of the requirements together like a document, which makes sure that we've got all of that hierarchy in there, we've got that structure. And you can see that we've got a number of different forms of requirements here. So one thing we've also got is a use case model. So this isn't just a flat image like we might have from Visio or something different. What we've actually got here is the ability to edit these kind of models within the tool themselves. And the models utilize actual actors that we've set up within the system. So those actors naturally can appear in a number of different diagrams, and that means that if we make changes to the actor itself, the changes will take place throughout all of the models that the actor appears in. So we can do all of that editing of that model within the tool itself. And by having a model within our requirements document, we're able to view our requirements completely. We also got a glossary here, so we've included a very brief glossary just here within the diagram itself. But again, what we're actually doing here is we're linking to an actual term that's defined within the system, which we can update separately. So we can link that term into the document itself, and that means that we can actually go back and make changes to that central term, and again, we can have everybody viewing that centrally. You can see what I'm also doing here as I'm showing you each of these artifacts is I'm hovering over the link, and it's giving us a rich hover view. So the rich hover view allows us to see information very quickly about the artifact without actually navigating to it. This applies for any type of artifact that we've got linked to the system. So we can do it here. So again, we get that linking across documents, breaking down the silos between teams with to see information from other areas of the project very quickly. Artifacts right here. I'm going to go in and double click on it. So what you can see here is because we've broken down the requirements into a number of different individual requirements, when I come in to edit this particular artifact, I'm not locking the entire document here, the entire module rather. I'm just locking this one individual artifact for editing, this one requirement. So what that means is that straight away we've really increased the productivity, because suddenly we can have many people coming in and working on this particular set of requirements, and it's just the individual artifact that's locked for editing. So again, if I show you something like what that, and in fact you can see from the symbol here that's come up now, that I've locked this artifact. It's just for me to edit and make changes to until I say otherwise. So what I'm going to do briefly here is I'm going to go in and ask for the system to look up this particular term that I want to see within the tool. So if I say look up, it's going to go away and look up that term automatically. I'm going to select the particular term that I want, and then I'm going to be able to save that artifact, and it's going to go away and save it for me. So that's just some very basic functionality for importing our requirements into the system and getting them up and running to the point where we can actually start working with them. So that's importing our data. What about some reviewing editing, which actually I've started to kind of look at here in this demonstration already. So we've already seen some very basic reviewing editing capability. We're actually working in a web browser here, which is nice because it gives us that immediate familiarity that a lot of people have with web browsers. So if I need to go back to the page we were just looking at, I can do that, and then I can jump forward in the way that people used to work. But we've still got a lot of keyboard functionality from things like Word to allow us to do some quick editing of the information we've got here. So, for example, I'm working in this particular requirement, but if I'm ready to go in and enter a new requirement, I hit Control and Enter, and without clicking the mouse at all, it's just created a new requirement there for me, ready to go at the next level. So we can do things like that to allow us to get a very rich editing context throughout. Of course, we've got all the usual style formatting that you would expect to see in any sort of document editor. We can have lists and tables, as you saw below, with glossary. And what we can also start to do is to insert things like links into the artifact, as I was showing you with that glossary. So once we got to this stage, we've got a very clear view of how we can work with the document very quickly and easily to get up and running. What I'd like to show next as part of the tool demonstration is where some of the real power comes in. So it's kind of editing the document and also looking at how we can start to create traceability. So what we can do with the document here is we can introduce a number of different columns which are going to show us different bits of information about the artifact. So, for example, I can bring up a column showing me who last modified it, if it's appropriate, or I can put a bit more information here to show when it was last modified. That's there we go. Got some modifications in there and who it was done by. And again, using that rich hover, we can hover over the particular user. I can click on that link and jump to a particular page. Of course, the other thing that's nice about links is that I can use my middle mouse, and that's going to right. But I can bring up the page that particular artifact is linked to. So when I've added some of these additional columns into my window, what I can then start to do is to save those columns in what we call a view. So by saving the view, I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, okay, I want this to be just a view that's just for me. It's going to show us when things were last modified, so we'll call it modification data. I can select that checkbox here to have the views used across all of the modules if appropriate, but I'm just going to keep it in this particular module for the time being. So I'm going to save that here. So what I've now got is that view set up for me to be able to come back to at any time. Oh, there we go. As you can see, we've got a series of views that are already set up here for us to be able to do some of that. So we might have a view that just gives us some very basic status and comments which are attached to that particular artifact. So I can see I've got a comment there for myself, which at the moment is not resolved. And then maybe we've got something like a high priority view, which is just giving us those must-have requirements that we deal with. So you can see I've just asked it to filter that view based on requirements that have high priority. So the way that I usually work with these kind of views, I give it a numbering system to kind of give us a workflow as we move through the system. But what I'm particularly keen to show now is how we start to create that traceability between requirements and how we can start to use these views to really analyze that traceability. So first of all, we can see here from this view how I've got requirements which are at the stakeholder level that we're currently in, and requirements where we've got linked artifacts to the system requirements. So again, we've got all of these links here set up, and I can rich hover over those to get information about that requirement nice and quickly, nice and easily in the same window. to be able to see all of that. This also works well in terms of access within the system, because let's say I'm somebody who only has access to the stakeholder requirement specification, but I don't have access to the system requirements. I can still hover over that information to get some of the details about that particular artifact that I need to work on the related requirements, but I can't access anything which I'm restricted to. So that view gives us a very clear, quick view of traceability, where we've got requirements here and requirements at the next level down. It's also worth pointing out that we've got these numbers here next to each of the requirements. So that's actually a unique identifier within the system. So every artifact that sits within Doors Next Generation and its related tools is unique. That means that we can link to it because it has a hyperlink, this being a web-based platform that allows us to share with people, and it means that we can link from pretty much any artifact of one type to an artifact of another type. So let's say that we want to start creating some more requirements, because some more traceability here, because maybe there's some work that needs doing. If I want to do that, I can go back and browse my artifacts again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my system requirements in one window, and I'm going to snap that to the right. Requirements, I'm going to snap those to the left. Next, get rid of the bars here to give my. So what I need to do is make sure I've got the right view set up, and that means that I can see again the artifacts and what they're linked to in the corresponding area of the system. So what I'm going to start to do now is to create some links here. You can see that we've not got that many links in our system requirements here, so clearly there's some work to be done. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the bumper next to this particular requirement. You can see that I've got that drag and drop going now. I've got a little preview of what it is I'm actually dragging, and I'm going to add it to the link column in the system requirements. Now, if I actually want to do a more customized setup of the link, maybe I need to specify exactly what the type of link is, then I can place it here and I can go in and do that. What I'm actually going to do for the purposes of the demonstration today is just drop it right here, and it's going to come in and allow me to just simply define what the relationship is, and it's going to go away and create that. There we go. We can see that we've got that number 93 linked on the side there in the system requirements. So that very easy drag and drop allows us to just go through and link some of the requirements very quickly and very easily. Once we've started to get that traceability set up, we then want to be able to analyze it. So again, my view bar here. Now what I'm going to go in and do is analyze some data. So we can start to do things like gap analysis, for example. So I've got a view here which is showing me where we've got requirements that don't have any of that. Maybe we're still in the process of writing the system requirements. Maybe we need to actually start doing some of the linking, as I was showing just then. Or maybe there's some other reason why we need to make sure that we're dealing with these requirements appropriately before moving on to the next area of the system. So that's a view that allows us to do that. If I go in and look at things from the other side, if I go into our system requirements, kind of got some similar views which are going to do slightly different pieces of analysis for us. So I've got one view here which is looking at the gold plating, so that's kind of the reverse of what we were just looking at. So this is where we've got system requirements which don't have any corresponding stakeholder requirements. So that means that, again, maybe we need to make sure that linking's set up, or maybe there's a reason why we shouldn't have this requirement at this particular level, to make sure we can go through and have a look at that. We've also got what we call suspect links. So this is where we've got links that have been set up to the stakeholder requirements, but since we've created that link, there have been changes at the stakeholder requirement level. So we can see here because I've been going through and making changes to this project, and I can hover over that. I can see what the linked items are and then go in and look at the changes to that. If I'm happy with that suspicion, I can just say I want to be able to clear all of those, and then we've actually removed that suspicion from the link there. So if I just refresh that view, we then should find that because we've cleared that suspicion, we then don't have it within the view. Select it. Yeah, not doing right there, but we can certainly see we've cleared the suspicion with that particular link. So that enables us to make sure that at the system requirements level, we're keeping a very tight track of what's being changed further upstream, making sure that our links are still relevant, and so forth. Additionally, we've then got similar views which link on to the subsystem. So here we've got different parts of the subsystem and links there in the same way. So again, at each level of our process, we're making sure that we're linking back up to the previous level, that we're satisfying all of our requirements at that very granular level, each individual requirement, to make sure that we're delivering just the requirements that we want to be able to show. So as the last part of the demonstration, of course, we might have something that's a bit more iterative here. So once we've analyzed the data and the traceability, we then might go in and do some more reviewing and some more editing of the requirements within the tool, and so forth, until ultimately we get to the point where we want to be able to export the data for reporting purposes. So to do that, there's a very quick way that we can get a simple report out of the tool here. We've got the ability to just produce PDFs and Word documents very quickly and very easily. If I just go through and say, create me a PDF document for the system requirements, the system's going to go away and do that. We've got some standard formatting set up that's just going to give us a very quick and easy view of what that looks like. If we need to do something more complex, then we might want to use a tool like Rational Publishing Engine to allow us to do that, to make sure that we've got some more complex document generation there associated with the system. But as you can see, just for a very quick and easy within the system requirement specification. Okay, so that's the end of the demonstration. Just to review what it was we've actually looked at here. So first of all, we started to import some of the data. So first of all, that gives us that single source of truth straight away. We're bringing our requirements into a single repository, which allows us to make sure that we've got all of our version control handled and so forth. And by doing all of the reviewing and editing within that single repository, all of that management around different versions of things is taken care of because everything's handled by the system in a central fashion. We're able to link all of our requirements together at that very granular individual level to make sure that we're keeping track of our requirements as they get decomposed into a more technical level. And then once we've got all of that traceability set up, we can start to do things like evaluate the impact of change and make sure that we're keeping track of all our requirements in a tight, controlled fashion. And then ultimately, once we're able to export the data, that means that we're able to produce nice, clean, organized reports that are going to satisfy external stakeholders and regulators. So again, if you come back to the 7 key fundamentals that I talked about early on, we've seen that we're dealing with requirements within this tool on a very granular level. Each requirement is individually managed within the system When I go into edit each individual requirement, I'm just locking that particular requirement. Everybody else can work on requirements around me without any problems. We've got different kinds of attributes which we can organize into views to allow us to slice and dice the data in different ways very quickly and very easily. We've got that hierarchy through folder structure, through modules if we wish to use them, to give us that context-sensitive hierarchy so that we have the right people looking at the right areas of the system. We've also got that traceability, which allows us to connect all of the linked artifacts, all of the linked requirements together. We've got collaboration in the tool. We've got comments that sit within the tool itself. All of the information, the audit trail of all the changes, all of that's kept within the tool. And finally, we've got some very simple reporting, which allows us to produce some nice, quick and easy reports out of the tool. So in terms of where this tool has been used before, there are a couple of key companies within the UK that have made use of our solution. So one of the key clients that we work with is Jaguar Land Rover. Through implementing the various rational tools and including Doors Next Generation, they've managed to reduce the time taken to detect bugs by 99%. Ultimately, they're making sure that they're delivering their projects quicker and easier, and that allows them to have greater level of innovation within their projects. MBDA, another big customer within the UK, their system design time was cut by more than 70%, and ultimately this is going to allow them to reduce their time to market and make sure they're delivering the right end result for their customers. Outside of the engineering space, and indeed outside of the UK, the Swedish Traffic Control Authority was one of the largest deployments of Doors Next Generation. So through the use of Doors Next Generation for handling things like capital projects, ultimately the headline there is that they were able to save around $300,000 for each major project that they implemented. Another good example is where we just had Doors Next Generation being used by a major US health insurance company. They were able to cut their project defect rate by more than 10%. All of these are available as references, case studies that you can view if you'd like to request those. But otherwise, I'd just like to say thank you very much for listening today. Thank you very much for your time. We've still got some time for questions, though, I believe. Tej.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for the great presentation. I hope everyone enjoyed it.